I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're delighted to welcome back one of my favorite guests. His name is Leon Petchkovsky, and he has written a very powerful book, an important book. It is called Nurturing the Nurturers, Healing the Planet, the Wati Kanyilpai Story. In this enlightening book, the author explores the profound impact of early childhood experiences and nurturing on global issues, issues such as violence, ecological destruction, and empathy. Drawing upon his experiences with Aboriginal elders in Central Australia, he presents a visionary approach to healing our planet by nurturing those who nurture others. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today, once again on Spotlight. We thank our team at Prime 7 Media for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support writers like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his wonderful book. The links are below this interview. Leon, great to see you here today.
Good to be here.
Great to have you once again. The Wati Kanyilpai story is an important one. For our audience, could you explain what that story is all about?
Well, I spent many years working as a psychiatrist in Central Australia, around the Alice Springs region. And in doing that, I got to learn the Aboriginal languages, and I got to make many friends, and I got some mentoring from some of the senior medicine men. And on one particular night, they took us out to a sacred site to teach us about a medicine snake dreaming. And in the morning, they asked me if I'd had any dreams. And I said, yes, as a matter of fact, I dreamt of this huge man who was walking through the landscape, and he was looking after everything that was looking after anything else. So he's looking after all the mothers, he was looking after all the mother animals, and so on and so forth. And he didn't just stay in Australia, he went right across the world. And the elders turned to me and said, Leon, that is what we call the Wati Kanyilpai, dream being. Wati means man, Kanyilpai means forever looking after. So this is the Dreamtime ancestor who forever looks after other beings who need to be looked after.
And that experience motivated you in your life's work, really, that it's important to nurture the nurturers, because truly the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world, right?
It sure does. Yeah. It sure does. That's the way the thing works. Of course, I've done a lot of work in what we call developmental neuroscience or developmental neuropsychology, written research papers, used brain imaging technology like fMRI, QEEG, all of that stuff. But I also saw so much of what was happening with the Aboriginal children out bush. And they were suffering terribly because the communities were under severe stress. So the mothers were under stress, and the mothers' stressed brains passed the stress down to the children's brains. Because, as my neuropsychologist colleague, Alan Shaw says, what happens in the first 3 years of life is that the mother's brain programs get downloaded into the child's brain programs. So if the baby's in the womb and the mother's stressed, the baby's stress circuitry gets activated.
Yeah.
Stuff
Those
like that.
first 3 years are critical, basically because of what we call imprinting, right? Basically, you're imprinting the psychology of the mother onto the psychology of the child, right? Yeah. We as a society,
or not just the psychology of the mother necessarily, but of any beings who
whoever the caregiver might be, could be a grandparent, it could be a dad.
Well, yeah, but it could be mum could be the primary carer, but dad, if he's into domestic violence, will also download stuff onto the baby's brain.
Yeah, exactly. It's a fragile mind that we're dealing with at that age, and a critical mind that we're dealing with at that age, with long-term implications. It seems like woefully little is done to nurture the nurturers, as you propose in your book, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. So that's how it is. In writing the book, I looked at all the religions on the planet, and not a single religion actually put any focus on early childhood nurturing. I mean, they carried on with all that stuff about baptism and circumcisions and crap. And then you think, well, of all the organizations on the planet, you'd think that the religions would have enough intuition to pick up just how important this is.
Yeah.
And yet it doesn't happen.
And you mentioned in your book that it has widespread impact on things such as violence in society, ecological destruction. Tell us a little bit about the connection between this nurturing the nurturers, or the lack thereof, and violence in our society, and problems with the environment.
Surely. Well, when you're developing right brain programs get damaged or negatively downloaded, what happens is that you feel miserable a lot of the time. And so, of course, as you grow up, you tend to do drugs. And then your impulse control is very poor. So you tend to get impulsive, violent. Your attention and concentration, even if you're very bright, are still poor. So you struggle with education. Your capacity to have good relationships is badly flawed. So your relationships tend to be awful. Now, if we were to go to a prison right now and examine every prisoner in there for evidence of developmental trauma disorder, it would be about 90%.
Yeah.
If we went to a mental hospital treatment facility and did the same thing, again, the figures would be pretty close to 80, 90%. If we could interrogate some terrorists, if we could interrogate some Hamas terrorists, 100% of them would have developmental trauma. So That's how it is.
Yeah. That's
So if yeah,
the implications of the implication that a child is damaged during those
yeah,
first 3 critical years and beyond, probably in many cases.
and beyond,
Yeah,
obviously.
and beyond.
Yeah,
That there's widespread impact on the world, from crime to drug abuse to,
big time.
just impulse control in general.
Yep.
One of the areas that you propose in your book that could be helpful is the idea of ministries in early childhood nurturance. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh God.
Hmm.
Again, nowhere on this planet are there any government organizations which specifically address early childhood nurturance. I mean, there's a few things in the Scandinavian countries which begin to come close, but hell, we should have that in the United States. We should have that in Australia. We should have that everywhere, and we don't.
It's interesting, we don't have any lack of resources when it comes to imprisoning people, but we
Exactly.
have no resources when it comes to the prevention of such violence and discord by helping the mothers when they need help, helping the caregivers when they need
Yeah,
help.
they did help. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Afraid that's how it is, and it's awful because that means things will just continue getting worse and worse. But even at the economic level, some of my colleagues in the United States have done kind of economic analyses of the cost
Hmm.
of childhood trauma, and they're huge.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something we can
Almost
afford.
as much as the costs of the defense forces.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like we're very retroactive, that we tend to, like I said, lock up the children when they're
Yeah.
16, 17, and 18 years old, as opposed to helping them when
As
they're
opposed to helping
0,
them
1,
once.
2, and 3.
Yep. 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 That's how it is.
From your experience, does the Aboriginal society or civilization have a better grip on the importance of nurturing the nurturers than we in our culture do?
It used to
Hmm.
a couple of centuries ago,
Yeah.
um, because the Aboriginal cultural system has a set of what are called skin relatives,
Hmm.
so that a woman who has a baby will have a whole lot of other people who are culturally designated mothers for
Hmm.
her and culturally designated sisters.
Yeah.
And the baby will also have that. So that if the mother's under any stress, there's several people that are already designated to go in there and help.
Yeah. It seems like in Western society, we need to appreciate once again the importance of a multi-generational approach, if you will, to parenting, where there are aunts and uncles and grandparents
All of
around
that.
to
Yep.
help with the burden, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. We need.
These are kind of first world modern life problems, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. So
What do you hope readers take away from your book? What do you hope they gain from it?
well, the first big thing I hope they gain is the ability to improve their nurturance. The book is aimed especially at men,
Mhm.
Though it obviously recommends women to buy it for their partners, the men around them. Unfortunately, a lot of men are damaged. But if we can only develop more empathy and more mindfulness in the male population, that would go a long way towards helping these issues.
Do you feel men are less instinctively nurturing than women?
It's an awkward one.
Hmm.
Um, um,
Or perhaps it's not
they,
instinctive.
they should actually have the same capacity.
Hmm.
uh, the culture tends to
Right.
modify things.
Yeah. I didn't know if it might be a hormonal thing that estrogen makes a woman more caring and a testosterone makes men stronger, more of a provider. You know, but
Yeah.
I think there are variations between men, variations between women.
Yeah.
And like you
Yeah.
said, culture dictates a lot of our roles.
Sure
Um,
does. Yeah.
We've obviously seen a huge increase in violence, a huge increase in substance abuse over the last few decades alone, perhaps 50 years or so or thereabouts. Does that have to do with the preeminence now of the single parent family, that there's not a lot of intact families out there or fewer than ever before?
That would definitely contribute. See, one of the big difficulties is if you're a young woman who has had a very difficult childhood, you will be much more prone to try to get pregnant because, quite unconsciously, without being aware of it, what you're looking for is vicarious repair.
Hmm.
So that, if you can look after your baby, you'll get some healing. And that is actually true so long as um, the mother gets some good quality caring. And I illustrate that in my book with one of the Aboriginal women that we looked after, who had a terribly difficult childhood. But she got pregnant, and we looked after her very, very well. We, had the obstetrics and gynecology people looking after her. We had the psychology people looking after her. We made sure that her physical needs were met. We gave her lots and lots of caring. And she had a good birth. She had a beautiful bonding with her baby. And there was this sort of chaos theory effect where all the people in her environment began to respond positively. Like the woman's mother was an alcoholic. She stopped drinking. The relatives who used to come to the mother's house and have drinking parties and riots stopped doing that. They just became kinder and more gentle.
Yeah. How
And
does
so
an individual who grew up in a very dysfunctional family who has, some negative patterns in their life, turn their life around to the point where they can actually be a good parent and imprint, a good,
Yeah.
where does that begin? How do you heal that?
Well, as I said, if you get help with that,
Hmm.
but the help has to be very sensitive because, women from that kind of background will be very, very wary of help
Hmm.
because for a lot of them, it'll remind them of grooming,
Hmm.
where that's what people did to sexually abuse them.
Hmm.
And so they'll be very suspicious,
Yeah.
and quite rightly so, I think.
Yeah.
So the people in the organizations who provide the help do need to be very sensitive, very well trained.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel universal basic income would be helpful in nurturing the nurturers by providing financial support to women who are of, little means?
Oh, yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah,
Yeah,
strongly support that.
yeah.
And of course, the big problem is that if the women are very damaged and into drugs, that's where the money will go.
Mm.
So that kind of financial support needs to be supported by nurturance organizations, by personnel. Yeah.
Do you see any hopeful signs in either Australia, the US, or the Western world where things are finally going right?
In Australia, we've got this amazing organisation called the Australian Childhood Foundation. It's not a government organisation,
Mhm.
but it is so good. It imports, many of the leading figures in developmental neuropsychology to Australia to give lectures and seminars and so on and so forth. So, the Alan Shaws, the Dan Siegels, the Martin Teiches, they all come out here for
Mm.
weeks at a time. And there's another organisation in Victoria which is run by Indigenous people, Indigenous women, who are right up to speed with the very latest in developmental neuroscience research. And so they've actually got connections with one of the university psychology departments. But because they're culturally skilled, they're able to pick up very, very early the young women in their community who are at risk.
Mm.
And they're able to sensitively offer help and nurturance to them. And that's called the Bumps to Babes
Mm.
organization. But it's all in my book.
Yeah. Well, it's a wonderful book. It is called Nurturing the Nurturers, Healing the Planet, the Wati Kanyilpai Story. Wati Kanyilpai Story, is that how you say it?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And it's an enlightening book. The author explores profound impacts of early childhood experiences and nurturing on global issues such as violence, ecological destruction, and empathy. He draws upon his experiences with Aboriginal elders in Central Australia and presents rather a visionary approach to healing our planet by nurturing those who nurture others. He stresses in this book that the first 3 years of a child's life, in particular, are very, very crucial. The messages, the psychological imprints that go from the mother to the child are very, very important. And that woman or that caregiver or that parent, or in some cases that dad, need to be given support during this very critical time, because the impact on our world, from drugs to violence to even ecological destruction, are very, very real. Leon, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you so much, and I send you all my warmest wishes, dear Logan, and I send all my warm wishes to everybody on the planet.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.